Hello and welcome to Build a Skill with me, Bill Herring. In this session, we're going to look at working with text. In previous videos, we've looked at punctuation. We've seen how we use these in sentences, and we've seen how sentences are used to build paragraphs. Okay, so let's look at individual text and see how we can use text as a great tool to enhance your work. So why do writers write? Well, there are many reasons why a writer will sit down, pick up a pen, or type on a keyboard and write text. It is important to be able to identify their reason to fully understand a text. So how do we find the reason? Well, when you begin to read a text, you will notice that the writer is trying to tell you something specific. This something specific is the reason they are writing. And there can be different formats why people are writing. It could be a blog, a letter, a magazine article. As you've seen in the session in paragraphs. Now this reason fuels the text in the same way that petrol fuels a car. So if a writer didn't aim to tell you something specific, the text would not be fueled and it would not move forward or be developed further. Now there may be different types of fuel or purposes of text. Okay, there are many types of fuel that writers might use. So let's look at them now. Okay, the fuel the writer uses to power their text can include any of the following. All right, so you can see here, these are different reasons why a writer may write a piece of work. Okay, it's either to inform, advise, describe, discuss, mock, persuade, explain, entertain, instruct. These are different reasons why someone would sit down and put pen to paper because they have something to say. And this is the type of text they may use. So we'll have a look at that further as we go through the session. So why do writers write? Well, let's have a look. Okay, text usually has different styles depending on its purpose. And again, we'll explore that as we go along. Okay, the purpose is essentially the reason you write the text. That's your fuel. That's why you sit down and put pen to paper. Okay, the form, the tone and formality of text will help you figure out its purpose. Okay, and again, we'll look into that further in a second or two. Now, there are different purposes for writing text, and there are many reasons for writing different text. Okay, one could be something like to persuade you. A brochure may be persuade the reader to buy a product. Okay, or you may be the text may be used to try and persuade you to change your opinion. Okay, so it depends on the scenario. So anytime you're in a situation where you feel that the author is trying to get you to change your mind or persuade you to buy a product, this is called persuasive text. Another one is to inform you. Another reason an author may write is something like a newspaper article to inform you about recent events. Okay, and that's what you'd see in typical in newspapers and other sort of formats. It could be online on a website. Okay, so there are different reasons why they would write to inform you. To argue. Now, an academic essay may try to argue for a specific point of view. Okay, it could be a scientific argument. Okay, because remember, although science is based on fact, it's ever evolving and people come up with different ideas. So they may argue their case to give a different point of view. All right, and so you look for that in text. So the author would put down their opinions and their views, and that would be up for discussion. And you could see something like a blog where you're talking about different aspects of a topic, okay? So you invite people to give their opinions on certain topics. So there are different areas where you can find argumentative text, for the want of a better word. Okay, now to describe, an online review may describe an experience, all right? Something like a film review or something like that, or it could be it could even be a novel or a magazine article describing, painting a picture. Okay, So if it is a novel, for example, it gives something like the sun shone over the snow-capped mountains onto the leafy green valley below. Well, you can see by describing that situation, it paints a picture in your head. You can actually visualize the sun shining over the snow-capped mountains. Okay, so that's called descriptive text. However, this isn't where the list of reasons stops. There are many, many more. Text can also be used to inspire, like a speech, instruct, like a recipe, advise, telling you how to, what's the best type of car if you're reading the Witch magazine or something. Or to mock, it could be a human story. So there are many, many reasons for writing text. And this you will see as you go through the session. Have another look at purpose of text, types of text and their purposes. Okay, you may come across instructive text. Okay, just like a recipe or a text that features or refers to any written or spoken material that provides guidance, directions or explanations on how to perform a task, use a product or understand a concept. So again, these are reasons to write. These are the few. All right, as again, like I learned to discuss, argue what you want to say. You can see the text shows more than one opinion, which looks at both sides of the argument and reaches a balanced conclusion. So it gives something like a film or book review. We can all look at a film and come up with different versions of whether we like it or not and argue the case as to why. Okay, advisory. Okay, text that suggests how to do something and is usually based on a topic that would benefit you. For example, a web page giving you topics on buying a new car. All right, so we've seen all these types of websites. Now here's the tricky part. The text may have more than one purpose of text. However, you will be asked to give text's overall purpose rather than go into detail. All right. So when it comes to exam questions in your reading paper, they can present you with a document and they may have a mixture of different purposes. They may use instructive, they may use informative, descriptive, but they will ask you about the main purpose of that document. And I'll show you some examples in a minute or two. Okay, let's look at tailoring when dealing with purposes of text. You will need to tailor your language and the techniques depending on the text purpose, much like tailoring clothes to specific people. Okay, for example, if the purpose of the text is to entertain, you could make it more amusing, okay, by including a witty phrase, humour. Humour is a great tool when you're asked to respond to certain scenarios within your reading or writing paper. Okay, using more visuals, photographs, graphic or colour, just like you see in the slide. Okay, and this what happens is this draws in the reader. Okay, and you can use techniques like rhetorical questions and imagery. All right, using idioms, adjectives, metaphors, and similes. And I'll give you the meaning of these last few at the end of the session. Okay, so these are things that you can add to your piece of work. Now remember, that's what it's all about when you're doing written work. All right, you want to add as much to your basic sentences as possible to give it a bit more interesting for your reader. Okay, so think about using these things within your text. So how do you spot purposes of text? Well, you'll need to find out who your audience is, right? And what's the purpose of the given text is. This should be made clear in the exam question, okay? All right, so what is the purpose of the text given? Okay, so you need to go through it and read it. For example, write an email to an upcoming guest about things to do in a hotel. Okay, so you have to recognize what that's about, all right? And you can see the upcoming event would be the audience for this task, and the purpose of your text would be to inform. So that's how you spot the type of purpose. Okay, and you can see there you can inform your audience as to what it's all about. Okay, what's available at the hotel, what's the surrounding area like, what's the comfort, what's the star rating. There's so much you can tell your audience in your answer. All right, so here's an example of what's the purpose. All right, look at the image. Can you identify its purpose? All right, take a second to reflect on it. What do you think the purpose of that document is? Well, the purpose here is to persuade the reader to vote. The language used in the text is convincing and may change the reader's opinion or may influence the vote after seeing it. Okay, so you can see here using your, you can see here in the text using the word your directly addresses the reader and therefore makes it more persuasive. All right, and to get familiar with the purpose of text, you have to look for some around you to see if you can identify what the aim is. All right, and the aim of this image here is to get you to vote. All right, okay, and they're using a direct address, so they're getting personal towards you. Now this could be directed at thousands and thousands of people, it doesn't matter. They're using a language that's directed to you, and when they do that, the purpose of this document is persuade you to go out and vote. Okay, trying to get you, draw you in to get you to vote. Let's have a look at this advert here, taken from a website. Okay, what is the main purpose of this advert? Take a couple of seconds to think about it. Okay, so you can see here within this advert, they're using informative language. They're telling you what's available. It's informed it's one bedroom, bathroom, etc. Giving you information. Now you can see here it's descriptive as well. A cosy couples retreat, Rock Cottage is the perfect location for exploring the Scottish borders, and it goes on to describe the area. Okay, and you can get further information by clicking on the link. So it's descriptive. It's putting a picture in your head of what a lovely place it is. Okay, and it's giving you further information. All right, it's telling you what's available. It's got Wi-Fi, TV, etc. Okay, parking. All right, and if you look at this part here, it's using instructive text. So if you click on the link, you can get instructions on how to get there. It may even show you a map. Okay. Now looking at all that information, the question is, what is the main purpose of this advert? Well, the main purpose of the advert is to persuade you to tick that box. All right. So you can see how they are using a combination of the different purposes of text. Okay. They're using 3 or 4 different techniques of text just to get you to click on that box. And when that happens, the main thing is to persuade. So when you're dealing with purpose of text, it could be just one purpose, like a recipe, just to give you instructions. Okay. Or it could just be a story, a magazine article describing events. But in this case, they're using a combination of the different purposes of text just to get you to sign that box. So be careful when you're dealing with purpose of text. Look for the main point of the document. Okay, now we're going to look at fact, opinion and bias. Fact is something you can prove. It's as simple as that. Opinion, you can't prove. It's just your own individual belief or your perspective on something. Okay, and bias means you have something to gain. All right. Or you're prejudiced against something. And you can see in this example, the snowboarder is saying, I hate summers because there's nothing to do. Well, if you love summer, you know there's plenty to do. So it's just somebody's opinion. But with bias, it means that they've got something to gain from it or they're biased against it. All right, so let's have a look at it. All right, fact or opinion. You will need to know the difference between fact and opinion and how to spot this. And this is usually at level 1. You don't normally get bias until you reach level 2, all right, in your English. Okay, now there are different phrases associated with each concept to help you. Okay, now the key to working out whether a sentence is a fact or an opinion is whether it can be proved. All right, so let's have a look at a factual question. A fact is a statement that can be proved. For example, a statistic based on research. It is something which is objectively true. Sometimes it can be either to spot a fact as it's introduced by a phrase such as research has shown, so that tells you there's evidence, okay, or something like scientists say, so you can see someone who's worked in that field may have factual evidence, okay. Now because of this, facts are usually found in explanatory or informative text, so stuff that explains something or informs you, okay, so that's facts. Now let's look at opinion. An opinion is a statement or a belief that can't be proved. It's neither true nor false. Okay, sometimes it can be easier to spot an opinion if it is introduced by a phrase such as, I think that, or I believe. Okay, So you can see that it's not based on fact. It's just saying, I believe something. I think it is. All right. In my opinion, you know what I mean? It doesn't, because somebody believes something doesn't make it true. And you've got to be careful. Sometimes people who give opinions can back it up with facts to try and further their claim that they're correct or not, especially in a persuasive argument. Okay, so be careful. All right, opinion is something you can't prove. However, opinions will not always be introduced by phrases like the above, so make sure that you check whether a statement can be proven. All right, and that's the gist of it. Can it be proven? All right. All right, so let's look at some examples of fact and opinion. Okay. Now, the population of UK is above 50 million. I believe it's 65 million now. Okay, this is a fact because it can be proved by records and data, things like the census and stuff like that. Okay. Note that these used figures here, above 50 million, can also help you decide if a statement is fact or an opinion. Statements which include statistics will usually be facts. Okay, unless someone makes them up, but I'm sure you wouldn't do that. Now here's an example of an opinion. Okay, footballers should be paid less. Well, it depends on your view and which league you're in. If you're in a Premier League, you think, oh, these prima donnas may be paid too much. But if you're languishing in the lower leagues, you would probably say, oh, we need to pay more money to get a better quality of player in. So it's an opinion. How do you prove it? Okay, this is an opinion because it's not based on any research or data, and there's no evidence to prove that this is a true statement. All right. Instead, it's just a belief or an opinion. All right, let's look at formality and bias. Okay, you'll have to tell the difference between formal and informal language, and know how to use both appropriately. This we covered in the punctuation session. So if you need to go back to punctuation session and check it, then do so. Okay. In conversation, the speaker must also consider who they are speaking to and adjust their tonal register accordingly. So you have to look at your audience. Who is your audience? Okay. And you would use the language accordingly. So if it's a formal language to a group of professors, for example, you would write formal text. If it was a group of teenagers in a blog, for example, you would use more of a direct text and a more emotional text, all right, and keep it nice and soft depending on what the topic was. Okay. But you will have to know what bias is and why it's important to look out for. Okay, so let's have a quick recap on formal language and informal language. Formal language is language used in professional settings. Okay, some features of formal language include full sentences, no contractions. For example, your proposal to improve the road conditions is a very good idea. And you can see there's no contractions. You're using the full words in English language. Okay. Instead of just replying in short phrases such as yeah, good idea, it's always best to write in full sentences when writing formally. No contractions. All right, you can see here, I should have called you back sooner. Okay. And this sounds more formal than using the contraction should have. All right. So the types of documents you might see are things like CVs, applying for a job, formal letters, any scientific document. These are the kind of documents you would use a formal language in and no contractions. Okay, so that's when you're asked this question, you're reading exam, what type of language is it? The first thing you look for is it formal or informal? And once you establish that, you can then back it up with other things, and I'll show you that at the end of the session. Okay, what you can back that up with. So let's look at grammar. Okay, for example, you want to use the correct grammar. So for example, hi Hollister, comma, please can I return the clothes that were sent to me? And it's a question. They do not fit properly. Okay, and you can see this example sentence contains capital letters for the names at the start of the sentence, a comma in the right place after the introduction, hi Hollister, a question mark after a question has been asked, okay, and a full stop to show the sentence has ended. Okay, some examples of situation where formal language would be most appropriate include, all right, and these are some of the documents you might come across, a job interview application, Okay, a student talking to a teacher or writing to a teacher, a business email inquiry, scientific documents. There are all sorts of documents that require a formal language. Okay, keep that in mind. Okay, now let's look at informal language. Informal language is the language used in less serious situations. Okay, some features of informal language include improper sentences, contractions, all right, use of slang, all right. So for example, all right, yo Matt Allen, what you saying? That party last night was lit. I've not got a clue what I just said, but you can see there they're using a colloquial language or they're using slang. Okay, and when you have to write a document that's informal, the scenario may give you, or it could be a document in a reading scenario. All right, and if they're using this type of language, and right away you can see it's informal. Okay, in informal language, you have more freedom with what you say. You don't have to conform to the grammatical rules or use sophisticated language. And it's a great way of adding humour to a document. If you get in a situation where they give you a scenario where you can use informal language, then why not inject humour? Why not inject use of slang and stuff like that? Because that's what they're trying to find out, if you can recognise that. And not only that, it makes your work more interesting if you can add these features to it. All right, some examples of situations where informal language is most appropriate include things like talking to friends or family, or writing to friends and family. All right, emailing, messaging someone you already know. All right, and writing a greetings card. Or it could be something like a blog for like-minded people. So you may be a teenager having your own blog, or an influencer on TikTok or something like that. You may want to write text or express yourself in a way that's informal. So okay, that's how you add features to your informal text. Okay, so let's look at bias. Bias is a term used when an author states their own opinion and disregards all other points of view. All right, they're trying to sell themselves. They're getting something across. They're trying to get you to buy into their way of thinking. All right, and that could be in the form of maybe try to change you from one political bias to another. Okay, it could be to try and sell you something. All right. It could be something like getting you to apply for a job. Come and join us. We're the best company in the world. All right. Or one of the best. How can you prove that? Now, biased language could contain exaggerations and sarcasm to bolster the author's viewpoint. All right. It's important to look out for bias, as the text could give a distorted version of the truth. All right. Understanding the writer's point of view and argument will help you to work out what is biased. All right. Now here's an example of bias. Okay. Right. A company advertising and promoting their own products. All right. Now a company's not going to slate their own products. They're going to try and promote them by saying, "Oh, this is better than that product," or I mean, we're producing the best in the world, that sort of thing. Okay. And of course, it'll be one-sided. They're not going to criticise their own product. Okay. So that's bias. Okay. Now here's an example. Our hotel is the best in London. It has the comfiest beds and the best views of the city. Okay, this is bias. The statement contains opinions that can't be proved and exaggerations in order to appeal to the guests. So you can see here, we're the best in London. Well, how do you prove that? Okay, right, it has the comfiest beds. Well, I don't know about that. All right, how can you claim that? Okay, and the best views of the city. Well, if you know London, it's a concrete city, so which skyscrapers would look better than another? Okay, so you can see in this case, okay, this is a good example of bias because they're making up stuff that they can't prove. Okay, and the idea of that is to persuade you to buy a room. All right, so the main purpose of that text, although it's very biased, would be to persuade you to book a room in their hotel. Okay, now we're finished with purpose of text. I hope that helped when it came to thinking about what an author may write for. All right, let's look at some features of text. All right, we can, as you've seen in the paragraph session, we can add features to text to make your work more interesting or to allow your reader to find information more quickly. And not only that, follow the sequence of your story. All right, features of text help the reader gain information quickly and easily. A page of text may contain all or some of the following features. Now, give it a heading, and whether you're writing, right? Because remember, what features of text apply to your written work as well as your reading. Because you may be asked questions about features of text. In fact, you will be asked questions about features of text in your reading exam. Okay, and one of the first features you may come across is a heading. All right, so at the top of the page to tell you what it's all about. All right, give it a nice bold heading. All right, color. Color catches your eye and it can be related to the text. Okay, so it can make a better understanding of what the text is about, and it's a quick visual way of doing it. Okay, you have bold. All right, you can add bold to anywhere within your text, whether it be a heading or within paragraphs, to highlight something that's important. And you'll see that in exam papers. And you see it quite often in exam papers where they highlight something in bold, just like this. And what that means, it's giving you an extra clue, or it's telling you something's important. And that's why they put it in bold. Okay, so keep that in mind. All right, and images. Images are usually there to support the written text. And again, it can make sense of what the text is about. And they can ask you about the text. What does it infer? What does it mean? All right, and so you look at that image and you come to some sort of assumption. And these are the first of the features you can add to your written work, or you may see in a reading exam. Features that you can use or come across: a logo. Now when you see a logo, you can see in this case NASA, almost everyone instantly can recognize that it's NASA, and they may want to read the rest of the text based on that logo. All right, it attracts your eye to that document. Okay, then you've got speech bubbles. All right, you know in the written works, in your written work, you have speech quote marks. Well, this is the visual side of it. So you may see this in a reading exam, and it has the same function of quote marks. It's just highlighting what someone actually said, just the same as quote marks. Right, now this one here, list bullet points, numbers, letters, dashes, etc. This is a fantastic feature to add to your written work, okay? But it can also appear in reading as well, all right? Because it just highlights everything, all the points you're trying to get across, and it puts it in a nice, neat manner, okay? And it just enhances your work. It's a win-win situation. A map, you may be presented with a map, all right, as well. That's another feature you may see in your reading exam. And as I said, some things like logos and maps and images you cannot put into your written work, all right, but you can put bullet points and stuff like that and quote marks and stuff. These are all the features you can add, nice short paragraphs, all these sort of things that you can add to your written work. But don't forget, these are all the features you could see in your reading exam, so be careful. So now you can have a go. Try this, okay? Pause the video for a moment, okay? And answer this question, okay? What are the two organizational features that have been used to help the reader locate the four main pieces of advice on keeping resolutions? Okay, so we're talking about features of text. This is a type of question you may get asked. So pause the video. I'll give you a couple of seconds. Okay, so how did you do? Well, any two from, you can see there, I've got subheadings, breaking up the 4 points. You've got bold text, okay? You've got nice short paragraphs and sections, breaking it down, okay? Center justification, you've got your bold subheadings in the middle of the page, all right? Images, pictures, icons, and clip art, okay? And finally, you've got nice short, snappy sentences. So these are all the features that are included in that document. Right, so how many did you get? Okay, let's have another go. Okay, what are the four layout characteristics that show this document as an article? So pause the video, have a look at that document, and tell me four characteristics that show that that article is a document, is an article. All right, how did you do? Right, any four from a title, a bold title there, you see. Large fonts, different size fonts. Okay, bold fonts. Okay, it's got the author's name below the title. Okay, it's broken into columns. You normally see that in magazine articles or websites. Okay, paragraphs, fairly good structured paragraphs telling your story from beginning, middle and ending. And it's got the publisher's name at the bottom. So any four from there gives you the features of that text. All right, features are important. Okay, and then finally you've got the image as well. Like, I mean, these are all features that are as part of that document that you can use in your exam to highlight what type of document it is. Okay, now let's look at planning. Okay, one thing a lot of people don't do before they sit the written exam is do any planning. They just go straight into it and start writing. Well, with the exam, you've got 2 questions. You've got 40 minutes per questions. And I guarantee you can plan your work in under 2 minutes. Okay, and let me show you how you do that. And by investing that 2 minutes, it makes your work a bit easier to follow and your reader to understand. Okay, let's look at planning. Okay, let's try applying our knowledge. Right, read this question carefully, noticing how many marks it's worth and the bullet points which tell you what your answer needs to include. All right, now this would be one of your 2 questions worth 27 marks, and you can see it instructs you what you must include in your paragraphs. Now, if you think about it logically, and if you remember the paragraph session we did, you can see there you could break that into 5 paragraphs. Okay, so your first paragraph would be your introduction. The second paragraph would be about what facilities they provide. Your third paragraph, what activities. Your fourth paragraph could be what you would do, and these could be your topic sentences, right? And then finally you could sum it up and say by why, and you'd have your 5 paragraphs. Okay, but how do you structure it? How do you plan for that? Well, if you plan for it, you'll guide you. These will guide you to plan for your answer. Okay, these points, the bullet points and stuff. Okay, so I'll follow along as we go through the process step by step. Now, if you were faced with this question exam, your plan might look something like this. All right, so you can see how easily it is to plan something. You just want simple words. You don't want to write long-winded sentences, just 1 or 2 words, and you can see how they're connected. So a SPI diagram is a useful way of getting your idea down on paper quickly. Again, you can do this in under 2 minutes. All right, and it will help you structure your answer better. But also, it's also organized as you can link your ideas together with lines. Okay, you begin in the middle with your main idea, all right, and connect this to subsections. So you can see you can fork off and you can add things as you go along. Okay, because remember in your written exam, whether it's online or not, you can have spare scrap paper as long as it's blank. Okay, and you can write these things down and you can do quick planning before you commit to the answer. Okay, now you can spot each of these stages in the example. All right, so have a look at that, study it, and see if you could think that would help you plan your work. All right, constructing your answer well is important too. All right, so your text will need to have a beginning, a middle, and an ending. And you can see now how it's structured, and it's structured based on your SPI diagram. You would use your SPI diagram to see where would it fit within that structure. Would it be the beginning, would it be the middle, or would it be the end? Okay. In this next stage of planning, the student has put all the ideas from the spider diagram into the structure. Okay. This will ensure that their answer flows and makes sense to the reader. Okay. So planning out your answer structure like this also makes it easier to be sure that you have covered all the necessary areas. Because sometimes if you go straight in and do your letter, email or whatever, you'll type away stuff and eventually after you finish you thought, oh, I forgot to add that. Okay, but if you use something like a spidergram or brainstorming or something like that, it'll mean that you will include everything you meant to say in your answer. So when you're doing a spidergram or brainstorming, keep it simple. Okay, and certainly don't spend any more than 2 minutes. A little bit on proofreading now. Proofreading and functional skill, it's an essential skill in functional skills, particularly in the context of language and communication. It involves carefully reviewing and correcting errors in the written text to ensure accuracy, clarity and consistency. Proofreading is typically done after the initial writing and editing stages as a final step before publishing or submitting your document in the exam. Okay, so the key points are: proofreading involves reviewing and correcting errors in written text. It ensures accuracy, clarity and consistency in the final document, and it's typically done as a final step before publishing or submitting the document. Now, normally when people have 5 or 10 minutes left at the end of the exam, they'll go through and they'll check for any errors, right? And they usually only proofread once. Well, what I would suggest you do is proofread about half a dozen times, okay? And what you do is you break it down into the different areas to check. So the first thing you may do is check your spelling, okay? And all you're doing when you go through that document is check for spelling. The second time you check it for punctuation. Third time you check the sentences and the sentence structure. Fourth time you check it for paragraphs. All right. Then after that, you can check for your verb tenses, or you can check, is it in sequence? Am I telling a story? Have I got the correct features? These are all things that you can check it for separately. So check your work at least a half a dozen times. Use that 5 or 10 minutes at the end of the exam to make sure that you've not got too many errors, and you'll be surprised how much you can pick up by doing that. So good luck. As far as the reading exam is concerned, here are some reminders. Take your time. You can pause the video as you go through these and check them. Okay, purpose of text. Okay, there's your 4 main ones: inform, persuade, instruct, describe. But there are a few, okay, that we've covered in the sessions. Type of language. Now, as I said earlier on, there's your formal language. Now, if you're writing a formal document, these are the kind of things you can back it up with. The document might be complex, but it'll be clear, it'll be focused, determined, serious. It can be factual or detailed. All right. So if you're doing a formal document, you want to give as much information as possible. But if it's informal, you can back that up by saying they're using a personal language or emotive language, shocking, humorous, confused, detached. Okay, these are all sorts of things that you can back up the type of language that is being used. So remember, your first point is it's either formal or informal. So if it's formal, they're using the full words. Informal, they're using contractions. Okay, and then you can back it up with the other information. All right, features of text. Well, this is the purpose of this session, is to show you some of the features of text. Okay, heading, subheadings, there's all the list, okay, to remind you. Okay, a phrase, remember, a phrase is a group of words which do not contain a verb. Gives you some examples there. Fact, opinion, and bias. Now, these are the 7 main things that you will be asked in your reading exam. Okay, and it's areas where a lot of people lose a lot of points. All right, but if you study them well, you will not lose these points. But not only that, if you have to do any written work, all of these things can be added to your written work. Okay, so it's a win-win situation when you're dealing with reading and writing. Okay, you can either see it, all right, that's why you study it, or you can write it, that's why you study it. Okay, so good luck. Here's just some word meanings that may come up. Okay, again, you can pause the video and study these. All right, and again, these are techniques or language you can use in your written work, whether it be formal or informal. If it's informal, you can use colloquial expressions. Now, here's one down the bottom that very few people use. Rule of 3, lock, stock and barrel. Okay, you can see there, if you use that, that's a good feature to add to your language. All right, humour, as I said, humour is a fantastic thing to do if you're doing an informal document. Okay, so you can see, study these well, and if you can, add them to your written work, but you may be asked to spot them in the type of language being used in a reading exam, example for example. All right. Now here you go, there you've got this little identifying language and features match up quiz. Click on that and you'll see it'll be in the context, the box down below, the comments box. All right, so you'll be able to do that and have a go at it and have a bit of fun. Okay. It comes to your reading exam, you may be presented with some words that you're not familiar with. Okay, here's a list of the top 10 words, the top 10 keywords that are used in reading exams. So again, pause the video, study them, okay? And if they ask you a question about certain topics, you know what they mean, okay? So study wisely. And that is a builder skill working with text with me, Bill Haining. So thank you very much, and I hope that helps.